Donald Trump is fully and completely mask off. And no, I don't mean that he stopped wearing his bronzer, but instead that he is saying clearly just how authoritarian he's willing to be. And that's what I want to talk about. And it's frightening. And we can't allow for, which is what I'm already seeing happen, this just to drift off into the background. And it's no longer a media story. The statement that Trump made, that we'll get to. First, though, before that, which is the core of this segment, let's talk a little bit about an update that I have for you. On the way back from the Daytona 500, Trump did say this about eggs.
Prices have reached an all-time high. What's your administration? Egg prices have reached an all-time high.
It was before I ever got here, it was at an all-time. This didn't, remember, I've been here for 3 weeks. And when you saw the inflation numbers, I've been here for 3 weeks. I have had nothing to do with inflation. This was caused by Biden. I had 4 years of virtually no inflation. So I'm just taking over. But I'll tell you what, this country has made more progress in the last 3 weeks than it's made in the last 4 years. And we're respected again as a country. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, gosh. So, again, before getting to the important, terrifying thing that he was so willing to admit, on that, really? He takes credit for the good things. He blames Biden for the bad things. It's true that economic indicators are more complicated than just the president, especially when a president's only been in office for a few weeks. But that's not how y'all interacted with Joe Biden. You didn't ever look at what's the real cause of things. You weren't talking about, oh, it's the avian flu. No, it was always Biden's fault. And you said, it was you who said on day one, you'll start getting prices down. We didn't say that you were going to do that. You said you were going to do it. So we're just holding you to that standard. And in a time where egg prices are going up, you're doing things that would make prices worse. Look at this.
Very strong.
Sir, do you have an update on your European Union is talking about banning food imports from the U.S., kind of along the lines of your reciprocal
Why is
tariffs.
that? Why?
Reciprocal tariffs. They don't like the
That's all right. I don't mind. Let them do it. They're just hurting themselves if they do that. I can't imagine it, but it doesn't matter. We're having reciprocal tariffs.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care, he says. But wait. You can't blame Biden for stuff when you're taking credit for the other economic indicators that are Biden's. I've barely been in office. Don't say I did anything. But also, I've already had the most successful presidency and everything's great and everyone loves us now. But also, everything's Biden's fault is bad. And then actively exacerbate the problem you were asked about by going, I don't care if European nations refuse to buy food from the United States in response to Trump's absurd tariff policy. So that's the update. But the segment that I have planned here is Trump saying this that we've talked about. He who saves his country does not violate any law. And this is quoting Napoleon Bonaparte. And in response to a report about a judge ruling that the Trump administration is defying the court order to release billions in grants, Trump posts that graphic again. He who saves his country violates no law. Meaning he's saying, you're damn right that I don't have to follow judges' orders because I'm doing this in my mind, not really, but to save the country so I can do whatever I want. He's not just going vaguely, who's the law? He's saying that, you see how people are saying, as I've been now for a while, the constitutional crisis that Trump is creating by trying to ignore the judiciary, which constitutionally has the power to oversee and to respond to the actions of the executive branch. And he's going, look specifically at that. I think I can do whatever I want. That's what that quote is, man. It is a terrifying, terrifying thing for him to put out there. Also on his social media feed, by the way, is him thinking he's citing wins, the Department of Government Efficiency posting a graphic about we've saved these tax dollars and we've prevented these funds from going to absurd DEI, woke, blah, 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 stuff. But then when you go through it, it's stuff like strengthening political landscape in Bangladesh. Yeah, that sounds like something we'd invest in. That's not too woke for me. Improving public procurement in Serbia. Consortium for elections and political process strengthening. Yeah, that all sounds pretty reasonable. Yes, whenever we want to induce more global stability and allow for more nations to, through our investments, be facilitating a more prosperous scenario that for them is good. When we invest in humanitarian purposes, that's good. When we try to have more stable elections, that's good for them. But also for us, one of the reasons we are as powerful and wealthy as we are is because we then are interconnected with these up and coming countries. Trade deals can be made with them. And all the stuff that we've been talking about that we then benefit from. The global economy that's exploded in part because of actions like this. It benefits us in many ways. And a globally stable scenario that is at least in part because of US investments. Not military involvement, all these crazy things, but just investments in, let's try to help that election process there. Let's try to uplift women's rights here. We then have less reason as these countries become more stable to be concerned, less reason for us to be threatened, and in the long run can save money because we don't have as many military needs. But, we saved all this money, it's great, is the reaction from Trump. Now, remember, you have the more, going back to this post, you have the philosophical side of this, right? The fact that MAGA is cheering on Trump saying, I'm above the law. But can we quickly just on a more personal level acknowledge we were right? We were right. I went on Piers Morgan. I went on Tim Pool. I went on all sorts of different shows. And conservatives would look at me and go, you're so, oh my gosh, you're so triggered by Trump. Oh, you're so hyperbolic. Oh, you think he wants to be a dictator. That's what I would hear. And then he's coming out and saying, dictator? And he's saying, I don't want to be held accountable through the judiciary. Now, is he a dictator? No, obviously not. If that's what you're interpreting, stop. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying the type of characteristics that would make us warn of such an ambition are laying themselves bare. And so in your personal life, in my public life, if you felt like you've been getting gaslit, you have. Because he's now admitting it. Yeah, if I'm doing this in the name of saving my country, then I didn't violate any laws, even if I did. Even if the reason why so many judges keep saying you're breaking the law, Trump, is because you're making the law, Trump. And how many times did we hear people go, oh, authoritarian. You think Trump's authoritarian? Oh, you're so crazy. You're so hyperbolic, Trump derangement syndrome. But what is a more authoritarian statement to make? Or Trump wanting CBS, and this seems to be headed towards what's happening, to pay him $10 billion. They doubled it, $20 billion. And is calling for CBS to be taken off the air. Because they edited a Kamala Harris interview in a way that he didn't like. And then when the full footage was released, it proved our point, which is that he was wrong. There wasn't some misleading, deceptive. But even if there were, media outlets have you know how many deceptive Fox News interviews with Trump there have been where they cut out his answer to the Epstein thing that was weird? But that's their free speech right, is to edit things the way they want. It's their platform. It's their interview. Same thing with CBS, and they didn't even do anything deceptive. And he's saying for that, they should be off the air, and they need to pay him $20 billion. And Trump's FCC commissioner has said, or has indicated, has made public statements that make clear he will block a Paramount merger, the parent company of CBS, if Trump doesn't get his way on this. They want to do things to media outlets. They want to control the coverage of media outlets in a way that we haven't seen an American president ever, ever, ever. Is that liberal democracy? Is that democratic principles? Is that American principles? No. And so you can just, even though it's upsetting, you can feel a little bit of vindication that all of the screaming of, oh, you're being so hyperbolic, you're just wanting to beat Trump in an election by saying he's a threat to democracy. It was well substantiated then, and it's even more well substantiated now. And we were correct. And now he's just out there admitting it, and his followers are going, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure, whatever. And please, media outlets, just because there are a lot of people going around saying, you can't be the boy who cried wolf, doesn't mean that's a fair criticism. I went over on the bonus show, a little bit of a rant, I think justified though, about how, by the way, if you want to get the bonus show, just get it. Just pull the trigger and do it. You can get it by clicking the join button below if you're watching on YouTube, and it supports the work that we do. But what I was talking about was there was some Dean Phillips, I think it was, who was making that criticism. Oh, Democrats are becoming the boy who cried wolf because they're saying there are so many crises going on back to back to back. And people aren't going to believe that Trump's facilitating so many crises. So they'll stop listening to all of them when a real crisis strikes. But the boy who cried wolf analogy doesn't make any sense, because in this case, we just keep seeing actual wolves. If there's a lot of wolves, we should call them all out. Just because some people's attention span can't hold to remember that there's so many wolves, that's not our fault. That doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. If the wolf is gnawing on my leg, I gotta tell y'all. Or on our collective leg. And that's what's happening. And whether it be the unlawful as determined by judges actions his administration has been taking, the withholding of funds that are legally mandated, the removal of people from their positions illegally who seek to hold Trump accountable, the threatening of media outlets as he's doing, the quid pro quo he's forcing onto CBS, and it goes on and on and on. These are real crises. And just because there's a lot of them doesn't mean it's wrong to point out that there's a lot of them or to characterize them as such. And then another update, Associated Press reports that Trump begins firings of FAA air traffic controller staff just weeks after fatal DC plane crash. It's incomprehensible. The Trump administration has begun firing several hundred Federal Aviation Administration employees, upending staff on a busy air travel weekend, and just weeks after a January fatal mid-air collision at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Probationary workers were targeted in late-night emails Friday, notifying them that they had been fired. And this is part of a broader federal government purge of workers saying, we don't want all of these federal workers who are dedicated to their job. We want to find people who are just partisan, who are just loyal to Trump. The impacted workers include personnel hired for FAA radar, landing, and navigational aid. Maintenance, one air traffic controller told the Associated Press. Well, what could go wrong with that? It's not like we have a very clear series of examples as of late as to how wrong this could go. The Daily Beast reporting Trump to fire hundreds from FAA despite 4 deadly crashes on his watch. Brian Tyler Cohen posting that the first commercial plane crash in 16 years in DC happened, then the Learjet crash in Philly, then Japan Airlines plane strikes Delta flight on runway in Seattle, then Bering Air flight wrecks in Nome, Alaska, then plane crashes in Scottsdale, Arizona, military fighter jet crashes in San Diego Bay, plane crashes in Covington, Georgia, 7 plane crashes since the Trump administration congratulated itself for restoring aviation safety, and it's citing a fact sheet that happened before all of this happened. Since that was put out, you've had all these instances. And it's not to say that on each individual one, we know that this decision policy-wise created this crash. That's not what I'm saying. We're not doing silly partisan attacks. What instead it's pointing to is in a time where we've seen since Trump came into office an uptick, a significant uptick in these tragedies. Why is that not moving the needle in the Trump administration such that they would stop the purging of employees, stop these changes in policies? That's the real question. Pete Buttigieg wrote, the flying public needs answers. How many FAA personnel were just fired? What positions and why? And I think that's a fair question. And given that Trump tried to blame some of this on Pete Buttigieg wrongly, I think it's even more fair that he comes out and asks that. It's not coming to conclusions before we have the full evidence. And I encourage all of you not to do that. But instead, unlike the Tucker Carlson, we're just asking questions, when you actually are asserting something without evidence, it's a genuine, can we get some answers? Genuinely, because you're making some huge changes and we're seeing some unprecedented stuff. I do want to say flying is really safe still. I just want to add that, because sometimes as we talk about these stories, we can sort of distort people's perception and then add anxiety that people don't need to carry around. So it's very safe for most people, statistically, obviously. But these heartbreaking stories, of course, are going to rock people and disturb people, especially when there are big questions, real questions around the Trump administration's policies. And more broadly, separate from this, we know for sure we're already seeing harmful impacts of the purge of federal workers because they have this obsession with uprooting the bureaucracy, whatever it might be. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you want to get the members-only bonus show, as I mentioned before, you can do it. It's that join button below. Or if for some reason, wherever you're watching, you don't have access to the join button, we do put a link in the description you can click as well.